Hello.
There he is.
How are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm good, Sherry.
This is really, I'm on a different computer, so I'm not sure how to.
Is this Sherry?
Yeah, I'm here. I see you, but my picture disappeared, and I have no idea what to do here.
I don't know if you can see me. I think that's all that's important.
Yeah, I can see you. I'm set.
Great.
I'll just sit here and drink my tea.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I see Joe is here. Hello, Joe.
Oh, Keto's here too. Hello.
He's just very short, apparently. Hello, Karen. Karen.
How are you?
You muted yourself, Karen. Hey, Joe.
Maybe I'm supposed to be muted.
Well, I don't know. Did it?
No.
Everyone can unmute at this point if they want to. I love the talking part. I love hanging out at the beginning and as you're going.
Signed in.
Oh,
I know.
yeah. Excellent. Joe, give it a couple more minutes. I don't know if anyone is on the sort of the tech side of things and out in the world, but there was a Gmail apocalypse today.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was a bad one yesterday where Gmail, YouTube, Google, a lot of things were down. But today, just as I was sending out the reminder for everybody, the first reminder, the reminder went out later, but the first reminder, Gmail apparently went down. So people who signed up with AOL or their own domain emails, they all got it. But if all of the Gmail ones just got bounced. And 100,000 people reporting Gmail is down. Second day in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully enough people saw the reminders from a couple of days ago and added it to their calendar. Hello, I'm gonna do, I think I have it set up right now. So when people join, they can come in. I think they come in on mute. Let me let's see. Oh, let's see. I guess I have an unmute all. Ask all to unmute. Oh, I mute participants on entry at this point. So let's see. Unmute themselves. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I always set it to mute on entry. So once I start talking, people come in. People come in muted. But we'll take care of that afterward. Keep it sort of casual. It's not that big of a deal usually because I like to be able to take questions. One of the things that I like best about Zoom is that when I do smaller group things like this, where it's really nice to be able to have little chats. And when the groups get a little bit bigger, you can even do this thing called breakout rooms, where you can take like 4 people and like give them little tasks. I do that sometimes with my smaller groups or my mid-sized groups during trainings and stuff like that. Brina, hello, thank you for joining. Yeah.
Hi, I just got home.
Great. Oh, look, nice weather there.
Hi, Brina.
Hi. The Christmas lights.
Very nice. Sabrina's in California. Karen, I know, is in Utah. Sherry, you're in Oregon, right?
Yes.
Oregon. Joe, where are you?
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, my brother's in Chicago. His name's Andy. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were just down at the horse track together.
Awesome.
He liked
awesome.
everything.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh no.
Hope it's not
Hopefully you already put my present in the mail. Awesome. I'm here in Colorado, and we're experiencing our first few days of winter, finally. There's a little bit of snow. Yeah. So I took a lot of questions. Some people said they couldn't make it and sent in some questions, so I will be happy to do it to answer them along the way. Some of them are answered already in my talk, but otherwise, so I'm going to save to the end for a special little chat. Oh, beautiful tree there, Brina. And but if anybody has any questions as we're going, if you know how to use the chat, you can just put them in the chat, and periodically, like if I will come in there and check on the questions. And because once I get started, I will mute. But if anyone has one of the things I like to do, I used to be in the corporate world, and I was a trainer in the corporate world, and I liked to make sure I went over the agenda, and then I kind of asked people if there was any expectations they had. Like, I want to make sure that you've come and you're putting your trust in me, and I want to make sure I answer your questions. So in addition to the things that I've talked about, that I've already promised, is there anything that you would like me to answer that's come to mind about intermittent fasting?
I don't have any extra.
It's okay to say no.
Yeah, I don't have any.
No questions is always the easiest. Because then I just get to talk and just say whatever I want. Yeah. And there were some interesting ones. One more minute. Is anybody intermittent fasting right now?
Not at this moment, but
Not at this moment, but you have.
Yeah.
And do you do it regularly? Do you like it?
It's been my lifestyle of eating. If I don't feel like eating, I don't. Yeah.
Nice. Great. Yeah.
But I don't do like every Sunday or every Monday. It's kind of whenever I feel like I need to do it. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to do the mute everybody. Let's see. Oh, they changed Zoom. There's like little things I can put in. I don't know what that means. There's a coffee cup. Oh, it's need a break. Interesting. Fun stuff. We're crazy. This stuff. Okay. Let's do entry. And we're already recording. We'll do mute all. And I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Of course, as soon as here we go. That's not it. It's it, but it's not it. Let's see. Here we go. How's that? Can everybody see my beautiful screen? Should look familiar. So, welcome and thank you for coming to my intermittent fasting talk. I have been a fan of intermittent fasting for a long time. I haven't written a whole book on it, but I have written a chapter in our latest book on it because I'm a big fan of it, and it's sort of like Rick Sherry said. It's sort of it's become a sort of a foundation of how I eat, and I just love sharing it. So I'm so happy when I send a poll to our list of people. I was so happy that intermittent fasting came back. So many people wanted to do it because it's really a nice thing. It can be sort of a game changer. And let's see. And I apologize, but these little sounds are coming through, and I want to make sure. Oh yes, okay. We just have to deal with the sounds. Builds character, mostly for me. Okay. All right, so I'm Roland Denzel. Most of you know me, but I'm a nutritionist, certified with precision nutrition, health and weight loss coach, and the author of 6 books, plus a new one on the way, which I'll just kind of give you the gist of in a minute. But what I don't say here in this bio is that I was, because my first client was myself, right? So I used to be obese, and I lost 110 pounds 18 years ago, and I've sort of learned to keep it off, learned a lot about nutrition, took a lot of training, got certifications, got educated, and got so passionate about it that I started teaching other people to do it as well. And that was really inspired me, and on a selfish note, it has also allowed me to meet Galina, who's my wife, and now she's the co-author of many of our books. And we have an online school and a membership community, and we coach together, and we teach people to be healthy, happy, fit, without going crazy and getting all extreme. So that is sort of like my joy in life, is teaching people to be healthy without getting super crazy about stuff. So, because you don't have to be crazy and extreme to be successful with weight loss and health. So here's the books I was telling you about. So I think a lot of you probably have seen or read The Real Food Reset. And then my upcoming book, The Author Brain, is going to be focused on more for writers, and it has a lot of information. It's good for anybody, but it's really for people who have brain fog and writer's block, and it's going to help my author friends write more books. All right, so I already talked about, if you have questions, feel free. I'm going to, I told you can unmute yourself here, and so let me do that real quick, give you the ability to do that. Allow participants to unmute themselves. So if you have a question, if I'm going too fast or something like that, feel free. You can either, you can unmute yourself and say something, and then just mute back in so there's no background noise, and we will be good to go. Where is my, here we go. Okay. All right, so what is intermittent fasting? So it seemed like, based on the size of the books that we see in the bookstores, intermittent fasting must be a super complicated system, but it's really not. At its very core, intermittent fasting is going without food or calories for a period of time in short cycles. So we're going to go through the different cycles in a minute, but fasting periods can be short, they can be long, all day, multiple days long, or you can do it every day, once a week, etc. So if you have ever skipped breakfast, then you have tried intermittent fasting. So anyone who says they haven't done it before, I almost guarantee that most people have skipped breakfast at one point. So they have done intermittent fasting. All right, so there's 3 basic types of intermittent fasting, and people throw these numbers around quite a bit. There's some slang for them, but the 3 basic types are 16-8, which is pretty much the type that I do. And what that entails for me personally is I eat dinner, and then I go to bed, and then I usually skip breakfast and have either a lunch or a late lunch, depending. So that's 16, and the 8 refer to the number of hours. So there's 24 hours in a day. So that means 16 hours of the day I am fasting, and 8 hours of the day I'm allowed to eat. Now that doesn't mean you can cram all the food you want into 8 hours, but you have to sort of play by the rules and use a little bit of common sense. But in general, that's what you start, and then you stop eating within that 8-hour period. The the 24, not to be confused with the next one, which is 24, but the 20:4 is basically where you're 20 hours of not eating, and you basically just have one meal per day. So it's kind of weird that they do 4, because if you read the books where they recommend just 20:4, they usually recommend just one meal. So unless you're eating 4 hours long, like at a buffet, which I think probably defeats the purpose, then it's sort of a weird one. So the last one, the 24:0. So this is where you pretty much take the day off of eating, a 24-hour period. So it doesn't really matter at this point when you start it, since it's a 24-hour period. A lot of people start, they eat a meal, they go to bed, and then they don't eat another meal for 24 hours. So that is that. All of them are good, and you can also actually mix and match. Once you get good at intermittent fasting, you can sort of do what you need to do, what you like to do. All right, so let's talk about a couple things. I promised you some myths, and we're going to debunk some of the myths, but I'm also going to tell you that some of the myths are true. So can intermittent fasting help you lose weight, improve blood sugar, improve your health, change relationship with food, reduce stress associated with dieting? There's one in there that I didn't really cover so much. I'm going to lump it in there with improve health, and it's going to help you live longer, because intermittent fasting, a lot of the studies actually came out talking about life extension. Now, the life extension doesn't really get thrown around as much as it once did, but there used to be a lot of buzz in the early days of the internet about people who were just really interested in life extension, often to the detriment of their daily quality of life. So they would eat so little on the theory that they would be able to live longer because their metabolism has slowed and their cell turnover has slowed. And a lot of them caught on to intermittent fasting, and they believe that intermittent fasting can replicate that. So you don't have to eat so little. So that would be a good thing. All right. So intermittent fasting and weight loss. Intermittent fasting is hard to type over and over and over again, and it's hard to say over and over and over again. So a lot of people call it IF. It's just like if, because there's a lot of ifs about it. But intermittent fasting, or IF, it can help you lose weight, but you need to be careful. Most of the benefits for weight loss actually still come from lowering calories. So one of the myths of intermittent fasting is that there's something special that happens to your metabolism that increases weight loss. But when they have done studies, where they call them metabolic ward studies, which is like, sounds a fancy word for, we put you in a room where we watch you and control every amount of food and waste that goes in and waste that comes out. And so we know exactly what you're eating. When they put people in metabolic ward studies, the difference between fasting and non-fasting was insignificant differences. Almost all of the changes in weight came from reduced calories. So all things being equal. So if it's the same amount of food, the same food itself, then just restricting the window, the eating window, as we call it, didn't have the effect that people thought. So the theory there is that when you're out in the real world, that you don't get as hungry in between meals, you have a tendency to eat less. So the perception is that you're eating more than you are, because when you have that 8-hour window, for instance, you can feel like you're eating a lot. Your meals tend to be bigger. So there's a sort of a change in your perception. But when they locked people in these rooms, which sounds pretty mean, but they did feed them, they did find that the benefits actually came from lowering calories, right? So, but on the other hand, like keto, one of the diets we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks in my upcoming workshops, one benefit to intermittent fasting is reduced appetite. So I just used the word keto or ketosis. And one of the things when you do intermittent fasting, particularly the 24-hour one or the 16-8 or either of them really. If you don't eat for a significant amount of time, your body can go into ketosis, even though you're not eating a ketogenic diet. And ketosis has the ability to reduce the appetite signals. So you can actually, once you've sort of learned the skill of intermittent fasting, you will find that during your fasting period, you're not as hungry as you once would have been. So that's really a great benefit there, reduced appetite. Other ones are time savings. If you're only eating one meal a day, then you only have to cook once per day. You have to shop less. You have to only do the dishes once per day. And everything gets super easy. So it's great time savings, even if you do it, whether you do it once a week or a couple times a week, or every day. It can be a great time saving. So some people really like that above all of the other benefits of intermittent fasting. And then finally, some people report, myself included, an improved relationship to hunger. I started dieting in the day when they told you needed to eat every 2 to 3 hours to keep your metabolism going. So what happens is if you're eating every 3 hours and then for some reason you can't eat for 3.5 hours, you get super hungry. But it's not metabolic hunger, it's psychological hunger, and it can actually trigger blood sugar crashes and things like that because there's the complicated relationship in our brain. And a lot of people, you've heard the term hangry, which has been going around the last couple of years, and that can definitely be there. But a lot of people report that after the period of time really learning intermittent fasting, they've improved this relationship, and a lot of these things start to go away. It's great. It's great for me. I've certainly experienced it. All right, a lot of let's talk about diabetes. So I don't actually say the word diabetes here, but talk about insulin resistance. So if you're, a lot of people want to know if intermittent fasting can help with blood sugar control. And there's quite a bit of evidence that shows that it can. We're going to go into that a little bit more later, but even the American Heart Association says that intermittent fasting may reduce insulin resistance. And a study last year came out showing that intermittent fasting helps with obesity and insulin resistance quite a bit. And also when you improve insulin resistance and you improve blood sugar control, a lot of your hunger issues can tend to go away. So this is a great thing. So if you suspect, definitely always talk to your doctor because you should be monitored and monitor your improvements and monitor your blood sugar if you have diabetes or if you have what's called prediabetes or insulin resistance. But there's some great positive signs there. All right, so this is sort of a general thing. Can it improve health? This is a question. I got a lot of questions that said, can intermittent fasting improve health? And yes, it can. So one of the benefits of any diet is, and intermittent fasting specifically, is that losing weight tends to improve many health markers, blood sugar, insulin resistance, like we talked about before, cholesterol, and it happens from the beginning of your diet. So as soon as you begin the weight loss process, your body has a tendency to shift a lot of its metabolic processes in a way that improves health. So it's really interesting because a lot of people think, oh, I have 50 pounds to lose and I have insulin problems or I have blood sugar. My doctor says I have to do this and do that. And they look, oh my gosh, it's going to take me such a long time to see those benefits because I have 50 pounds to lose. But it's absolutely not true. So as soon as you start losing weight, then you start to see changes. And a lot of my clients have noticed that just losing a little bit of weight, reducing certain types of food can help with inflammation, joint pain, helps them move better. And then the mere fact that you're being in a caloric deficit, and I don't think that's a very scientific term, but caloric deficit, if your body takes 2,500 calories to maintain your weight and you eat only 2,000 calories per day, you're in a caloric deficit of 500 calories per day. So you're burning off more then you need to maintain. So when that starts to happen, even whether you count calories or not, this process has positive effects on health when you're starting at overweight or obese. So again, health improvements begin on day one of your diet. You do not have to wait until you've reached your goal. You're going to see benefits all along the way. So that's great news. This is one of my favorite ones because I don't know, like if you're an emotional eater, is it like another sort of addiction where you say you still have emotional eating, but you're just recovering? I don't know. I don't know enough about that. I have to ask Galina about that. Galina is my wife, and she's a emotional eating expert, and she would probably, I don't know, she might cringe that I'm even talking about this, but I think it's important because it's helped me. My relationship with food is dramatically different now than it was when I was doing intermittent fasting. So, and I think the primary thing was it taught me the difference between wanting to eat, having some cravings, and true hunger. I don't feel like I really knew what true hunger was. I talked about hangry before, and how, I worked a corporate job, and if I was in a meeting and that meeting went long, I would feel like almost like a panic. When am I going to be able to get out of this meeting? When am I going to be able to have food? And it turns out that I wasn't really hungry per se. I just felt the need to eat. My body was sort of primed to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And when I went over that period of time, I subconsciously panicked, got hangry, and wanted to eat. And what happened? When I got to the food, I usually overate. So it really reduced my instances, that's a hard word to say, reduced my instances of being hangry. And it taught me what it really feels like to be hungry. And it's really helped me now. Like if I'm in a meeting that runs long, then I no longer panic and need to eat. I know that I might still be hungry, but I don't panic and get hangry. And that's been a huge weight off my back. It's been a huge weight off of me. I'm gonna mix too many metaphors and get too many quotes wrong and all that, but I think you get the idea there. All right. Can intermittent fasting help with stress? Well, it depends. It can reduce stress if the causes of your stress are the eating and the meal planning themselves. Just talked about in the last one how it reduces my stress about being hangry or about meetings going along and not being able to get to food or get to food that I really feel like I want to eat. Intermittent fasting can really help with that. Learning about true hunger helped me to be around food that I didn't want to eat. In the corporate world, there would be bagels and donuts and pizza and buffets and all sorts of things that I didn't want to eat to that degree, or sometimes I didn't want to eat at all. So being able to recognize true hunger and having the ability to intermittent fast allowed me to skip those things, or to have a token amount just to sort of tide me over until I could get my real healthier food. Finally, if you don't like cooking, shopping, or meal planning, then intermittent fasting can certainly help. Like we talked before, if you only have 1 meal to make per day or 2 meals to make, it really can take the load off of it. A lot of my clients, they absolutely hate cooking, or they like cooking once a week. They like to cook on Sunday, and they do batch cooking, and they put stuff in the refrigerator or the freezer, but they don't want to do it every day. So intermittent, if you do the math, if you normally eat 3 meals a day times 7 days, that's 21 meals. But if you can reduce that by 1 meal per day, that's 14. If you reduce it by 2 meals a day, you've got it down to, what's the math? 7. So it can be hard to get everything you need in just 1 meal per day. So for most people, I like the 2 meal a day, the 16-8 method, because I think it's a good place to start. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. All right, let's talk about the problems with intermittent fasting. The problems, I'm going to say right now, the problems are not the end of the world. And most people can benefit from either intermittent fasting or at least learning to intermittent fast. We're going to talk a little bit about the skill of intermittent fasting in a minute. But if you get hangry a lot, if you're stressed, it can cause more sudden hunger in some people. Because, I mean, you are going hungry if you're used, especially at the beginning. And with most diets, you have to follow the spirit of the diet. I have had clients and readers email me before and say, you know, I'm following the intermittent fasting protocol and I'm only eating with them in my 8-hour window. But when they send me their food log, they're eating enough food in that 8-hour window to really, like, to sort of, it's like double the amount that they should be eating. So they're really sort of taking advantage of the time window to the detriment of their health and of their weight. And it's because they're looking for a loophole. It would be like if you said, I have room in my diet for 300 calories of dessert, and a donut is 300 calories. And somebody accidentally made a donut that's like one of those, you know, 2 donuts merged into one because they were in the fryer together. And you know, looking at it, that that's a 500 calorie donut. But the label says 300, so you eat it anyway. So that's looking for a loophole, and it doesn't do you, or it doesn't do anybody any good. Except for the donut salesman got rid of a donut that did not look perfect. So the next one, you have to believe that intermittent fasting is a good diet. As with any diet, if you don't believe in the diet, if you don't believe that the diet is something that is good for you, then it's not going to work. A classic example is there's a diet where people say no white at night. So the goal of that is not to eat potatoes or not to eat bread or not to eat rice, things, carby things after it's dark at night. But that is totally arbitrary. There's no specific reason. It's just a rule that they came up with to sort of mentally trick you into reducing those things or eliminating those things after a certain amount of time. But the goal really is to reduce the calories enough to where you lose weight. But if you believe that that's not really a true thing, you're like, I don't believe that. I mean, so this time I'm going to have the rice, or this time I'm going to have the potatoes. It's not a good diet. The same thing can happen with intermittent fasting, which is what happened with my client who ate double the amount of food in the 8-hour period of time. So don't do that. Believe in the diet. If you don't, find a diet that you do believe in. Find a diet that is a good diet, that is, and then find a way to make that work for you. That is my advice there with any diet. And intermittent fasting is not a magic pill. It doesn't do anything special to the metabolism, as we talked about with the metabolic ward study. It is really about giving you the ability to go a period of time without food or without calorie intake, so that when you are eating, you can eat a more satisfying amount of food, you can focus more on healthier food, and you can overall reduce the amount of food that you're eating without feeling like you're depriving yourself by eating tiny little meals. That is the secret there, and that's why I love it. Because I was in the fitness industry for such a long time where I had to eat 3, 4, 5, 6 200-calorie meals per day. And a 200-calorie meal is not very satisfying, even if you get to eat 6 of them a day. But so by reducing the number of meals, you're able to have fewer meals, but larger and more satisfying. Gives you the ability to eat out in restaurants periodically, because it's really hard to get out of a restaurant if you only have 200 calories to spare. But if you have 400 calories to spare, then it's not so hard to eat at a restaurant, especially, or go to somebody's house. Well, COVID times are a little bit different, but if somebody makes something and like you don't have to worry so much about like what exactly is in that, how many calories. So it's a great way to reduce stress. And this last bullet here, a good diet reduces stress, not adds to it. If you are already a stressed out person, intermittent fasting can have the ability to, or the tendency to bump your stress levels up a little bit higher. So always sort of monitor that and see whether it's causing a problem for you. Now, I'll stop sharing just for a minute because I want to see if anybody has any questions. Sharing, yeah, do the, oh, there. Okay. You can unmute. Brina, you have a question?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So it doesn't, I did think that it was some magic thing about helping you burn extra fat, because there's this period of time that you're not consuming any calories. And if you consume anything that spikes your blood sugar, then it messes it up. Like if you put anything in your coffee, even if you have lemon in your water in the morning while you're still not supposed to be having any calories. But it really is just a way, kind of a trick to minimize calorie consumption.
Yes. Now, uh-oh, you got an echo going on there.
Sorry, it's
so there is, so what can happen though, so yes and no. So yes, it is a quote unquote trick that manages your calorie consumption. But so it's not always that important that you're technically breaking or not breaking your fast. Because if you think about it, if you look at a nutrition label, even coffee has a tiny little bit of calories, just black coffee. It's not very much, but so like, where do you draw the line? So water has no calories, right? A squeeze of lemon probably doesn't have very many calories. A cup of coffee, maybe 5 calories, right? In a pretty decent sized cup of coffee. So technically any of those things other than the water would be breaking the fast. So fasting is not a technical thing. It's like, what will it do? Like, how much does it take for it to fundamentally change your metabolism? So either spike your blood sugar or speed up your metabolism or take you out of ketosis. So is it changing the state that you're in? That's one thing there. So one thing that can happen is, like, let's say skipping breakfast, that's my favorite way to do intermittent fasting. I go to bed at night and I don't eat anything till lunch, sometimes a late lunch. So I'm a black coffee person, but the other day somebody gave me because you know, if you get a cup of coffee out, they put the stuff in it, like, so you don't know. So I didn't notice that I got half and half until I was out. So, but I drank it anyway. So did it do anything for me? Not really. Like, it didn't, like, it can trigger your appetite. So like, once you start eating or drinking something with calories, it can trigger your appetite and make it that much harder for you to make it to the period when you wanted to, like your 8-hour window. So that's one thing. Now, depending on how much you eat and what it is you eat, you can get, you could have some sort of an insulin surge, which could trigger more hunger or something like that. But it's very unlikely that it's going to do anything significant as far as the weight loss goes. Because there's plenty of studies that show that even people who are, for instance, the people I talked about how, you know, there are some diets where you're eating every 2 or 3 hours. And those diets where you're eating every 2 or 3 hours, your insulin is going the whole time. Now, that's not spiked, but it's sort of level, because you never have enough time for it to go all the way down. It's just kind of staying level. And they used to think that was important, yet people still were able to lose weight even under that. So it's all really about the calories at that point. So that being said, long story short, or whatever other metaphor, or, you know, little, whatever you call that little thing, is that once you get in the mindset and the physical state of fasting, it can be much easier to keep going if you don't have anything significant from a calorie standpoint. But that can be like that for anything. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever had this experience, but like, if you have like a little bit, you're doing a little fast and you forget and you just taste something, right? It's not enough to do anything, but sometimes it can trigger you to be hungry later. Or if people, so there's lots of things that our brain is such a mysterious thing. We don't always know why it's doing it. So we can get hungry because we smell something. We can get hungry because we see something. And we can get hungry because somebody mentions that food is coming. My uncle gets hungry when he chews gum. Like some people can chew gum and it makes their hunger stay away. My uncle gets hungry when he chews gum because it's like, it's telling my stomach something's coming. It's, yeah. Did that answer your question? Great. Sherry, did you have a question? Let's see.
There. It's not really a question. Well, it is kind of a question. I read an article some years ago about intermittent fasting, and they were saying that it would be helpful to world hunger if we had more intermittent fasting. And I can see that's a cool idea that would give some people the impetus to do this, but I wonder if it's true. Would we really make a difference? There's so much food waste that, how can we measure this? And maybe that is just a myth.
So there's two things. Is if we actually were able to, so there's the question of, it's just like the starving kids in China kind of a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if we could get that food to starving kids in China, it would be great, but we can't. And like, there's like, and even if we don't grow it here, that doesn't mean that more is growing there. So it's a hard thing to do. So I think I think they're looking at it from a mathematical perspective. Like it requires so many calories to keep the world going, and it's hard to keep that world going. So if we reduce the number of calories that are required, then we can feed the world. But the same thing could happen whether we, there are cultures around the world like Okinawa where they don't really do intermittent fasting, but all of their meals are much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's not much difference there from like how much food is being, because it's all about how much food is in their mathematical model, how much food is being used. So yeah. So I think I think there are probably many other things that we could do that would help world hunger more than everyone intermittent fasting.
I'm excited, there's no foundation basically. But it sounds like a good idea.
It sounds good from a math perspective.
Yeah.
And if we and it could have been something where, I've seen people where they're, like we've all seen the thing where for the cost of one meal a day, you can help this child or this family, right? So it could have been something where they were encouraging people, if you're not going to eat, take the money that you would normally spend on this food and send it over there. And if we could do that, then that could certainly be a benefit.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's in here. Okay. If you've been around me or Galena a while, you've seen this piece of artwork before. She doodled this. You might notice this little thing that looks like the COVID virus, the coronavirus. She made this way before. So either she was like some sort of a psychic, or it's just random because it's not COVID. But it could be a virus because almost anything, it could be the fear of a virus. So when we talk about this funnel of stressors, right? And that was let me go back to this previous slide. I was talking about stress. A good diet reduces stress, not adds to it, right? But there are so many different things in our lives that are causing stress. So since all of these stresses adds up, sometimes just introducing something like intermittent fasting can be a negative. So even though by and large, it can very well be a positive, at the beginnings, when you're learning to do intermittent fasting, you can be really hungry. Like I remember when I started, I tried it once and I was like, no, I am not gonna do this because I'm so hungry. But then I decided, oh, you know what? Maybe like some other things, maybe I gotta work my way into it. So I started, and if you have our latest book, Eat Well, Move Well, Live Well, there's a chapter in there about intermittent fasting, and in there's a chart on how to start doing it, and it's basis, but I can net it out. You can figure this out, right? So you start off by having breakfast one day, and then the next day you push the breakfast back, and then after that you push it back further, and like over a couple of weeks, you just spread this thing out until pretty soon you're not having breakfast until very late, and then by the end of the next week you're just having a late lunch and you're skipping all that stuff. Boom, you're intermittent fasting, and you're doing the 16-8 method. So that's one way. So, but in the process, it can be very stressful. Being hungry is stressful. If I'm in a meeting and I'm trying to work on something, I'm concentrating on something, and I'm very hungry, it's hard to get things done. It's hard to take that and just sort of mentally set that aside. So that's one of the biggest things. And that's one of the reasons, like when somebody comes to me and they've got a lot of stress in their life, I usually help them find something else. Intermittent fasting is a great thing when you've gotten your stressors a little bit lower. But it's not always so good when your funnel of stress here is super full. So, intermittent fasting, who is it good for? It reminds me of that song. What is that song? Somebody will remember. Somebody will put it in the chat. War, what is it good for? Boom, absolutely nothing. So, who's it good for? Busy people. Intermittent fasting can save time. Fewer visits to the grocery store, less cooking, less dishes, all sorts of things, and less chopping, fewer decisions to make, right? It's good for people with patience. Like I said, it's a skill that takes time to learn, so you have to have patience in order to make it work. And then finally, people looking for simplicity. It has simple rules, and once you kind of get into them, it's really easy to continue to intermittent fast. And just once your hunger issues have been mastered during the fast, it's really easy to carry on. And just the one caveat, learn the rules before you break them, because you don't want to be like, quote unquote, that guy that I talked about earlier who crammed 4 meals into a two meal period. Who's it bad for? So again, it's really kind of, it comes down to the stress, but there's other things too. People with anxiety under a lot of stress, it's bad for them, at least at this period of time. People with emotional eating issues. If you have emotional eating issues, you have to take care of that thing first before you can start doing something like intermittent fasting. Because even though it has a positive effect with your relationship to hunger, if part of your problem with emotional eating is your relationship with food to begin with, you don't want to sort of jump into something like intermittent fasting, which can trigger some of these old memories and old feelings, and stir up the emotions. So first things first, take care of that, and then get into intermittent fasting if your doctor or your health professional or your emotional eating coach says that it's good for you. Who's it bad for? People who believe breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So this is not an intermittent fasting myth, but breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. This is a big myth. But if you believe this is one of the things that has unhooked so many successful intermittent fasters that I have. Because if you believe breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and you start off with your breakfast, it's very hard for most people to skip lunch and skip dinner. It's very easy for most people to have dinner, go to sleep, and not have anything to eat until late in the day. But the reverse is very rarely true, because once you get up in the morning, you have your breakfast, your insulin goes up, and then when it comes down, you get hungry, and it's really hard to maintain that. When you go to bed after eating, your insulin does drop in the middle of the night, but that's the natural effect anyway. Your cortisol goes down. And so this is the most effective pattern for beginners who want to do intermittent fasting, is to skip breakfast. So you believe breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And I can go into like why that's not true in a minute, but it's not true. And yeah, so also if you believe metabolism slows if you don't eat regularly, intermittent fasting is not for you. Metabolism does not slow if you don't eat regularly. It slows while you're not eating, but as soon as you eat again, it comes back up. It takes a long time of very restrictive dieting for your metabolism to slow to any significant degree. But if it's a belief system, then it can be very hard to make intermittent fasting succeed for you. So I said before, intermittent fasting is a skill. So we live in this world that tells us we need to eat 3 meals a day, plus snacks for a lot of people, right? That's a habit that takes a lot of time to unlearn. And during that period of time, you can be both physically hungry and psychologically hungry. Take weeks or longer for you to master. So again, in the book, and I can actually, if you're interested, I can send you that. If you don't have the book, I can send you that chapter. Or if you want to get the book, I can send you a link to the book. But it's fairly easy to master if you want to. It's just like typing, or it's like, well, not juggling. Juggling is hard. I'm still trying, but I can type, and it's a skill worth mastering. Juggling, not a skill worth mastering for me. Intermittent fasting, skill worth mastering. So if you have the patience, it's amazing. So intermittent fasting, again, can teach you a lot about yourself, even if you don't always practice it. Which leads me to this. Not everyone should practice intermittent fasting, but everyone should be able to in an emergency. One of the best things, I talked about meetings running long. It's not a real emergency, but if you're a hangry type of person, it can be an emergency when you don't have food. So I've been on a flight that was supposed to land at 6 o'clock, but it's circled for an extra 2 hours. And boy, was I hungry. So intermittent fasting gave me the ability to just kind of ride that out. So there's a lot of things of all the things that intermittent fasting can do for you, is it can give you peace of mind when you need it the most. When you just can't get to your food, or you can't be around the food that you want to eat or that you think is healthy, intermittent fasting can save the day. So it's a skill that everyone should be able to do in an emergency. Okay, so let me, before I go to the questions from the crowd, does anybody have any questions of what I just said? Is anybody curious about the contentious breakfast statement I made?
I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it, but I was going to ask another question. What was I going to ask you? Is the time frame, this is not the question, but is the time frame, is there no magic to that either? It's just a matter of making your eating window smaller so you consume less food?
Yeah.
So like
exactly.
if I finish dinner at 8 o'clock and then I eat at 10 o'clock the next morning, that's only 14 hours.
Yeah, I mean, you've missed out on the 2 hours, I guess, of quote unquote weight loss, right? But, so what you've really done there is, so once you start eating, again, once you eat once, you're triggering the hunger cycle, right? So if you eat breakfast, but you still only eat the one other meal later, then not that big of a deal, right? Then not that big of a deal. But here's what the evidence that the science does not totally add up, like why it needs to be a specific amount of time. Because it's totally variable how long something takes to digest in your belly, right? And so different things take longer to digest than the others. It depends on how much you ate, like how close you are, like did you exercise recently? Are you going to exercise after? So like, do you count the time from the last bite you swallow? Is that when it starts? Like, so it's kind of hard to say, right? So I would it's like not worth worrying too much about it. but it's like, oh, I'm roughly 16 hours. And that's why I almost always tell people to not worry so much about the name 16:8 or 20:4, but to think about how many meals are you going to eat? Like how many normal sized meals are you going to eat? So I usually eat, lunch, like I usually eat lunch and then I eat dinner. And sometimes I have a snack in between if I'm really hungry. But I know from over time that that is the amount that I need to maintain or lose weight. And the same thing with the 4-meal one, I mean the 4-hour one, right? Like you wouldn't want to be eating for 4 hours, but you might have a snack and then a meal, but it's really just one. It's really just one meal in that, or eating in that window. Because again, with the math, it's hard to know, like when does eating stop and digestion start, etc.
So do you do this on most days of the week, most of the time? Is that how you eat? Okay.
Yeah,
That was
breakfast is like a special occasion thing. So we go somewhere, we have company, it's a holiday, that kind of stuff. I'll have breakfast. Or a lot of times I have breakfast, but it's lunch. My first meal of the day is probably, I don't call it brunch because it's certainly not fancy, but it's, the eggs and stuff like that. I love those things. So it's a great way to have lunch versus traditional lunch foods. Except for tacos, I can have tacos every day. So let me talk about the breakfast thing real quick. So the myth of breakfast being the most important meal of the day comes from studies where they studied what people ate, which meals they ate, and things like that. And what they found was that people who were the healthiest, they looked at the people who were healthiest and they charted like what meals they ate, and most of them ate breakfast versus a lot of the more unhealthy people didn't eat breakfast. But when they got deeper into the data, they found that it's something called the healthy user bias. So if I tell you things are healthy and you do them because you want to be healthy, you're going to be healthier because you're doing a lot of other things that are healthy too. So another one that's very similar to this is red meat. So a lot of people believe that red meat is bad for you. So people who want to be healthy eat less red meat and they're healthy. But it's not really because of the fact that they're not eating all the red meat. So when they look at the people who are the unhealthiest, so this is sort of the reverse, they find that, oh, it's not really the red meat itself, it's the things that people tend to eat when they eat red meat. So they have more beer, more soda, more buns, more fries, more mayonnaise, like all the things that are associated with typical red meat. If they pull out the people who eat healthier red meat, like I'm gonna have, stir-fried beef with vegetables and rice, those people tend to be pretty healthy versus the people who have like steak and eggs, because steak and eggs aren't bad, but what comes with steak and eggs? Hash browns and toast and jelly and all those kinds of things. Crazy kinds of fats that aren't good for you, like all that kind of stuff. So it's the healthy user bias, and it gets a lot of things like that. It gets people, that's like why sometimes people think coffee is bad for them, because people are under the impression that coffee is bad. So therefore, if they want to get healthier, one of the things that they do is cut out coffee, but they've also cut out a lot of other things and gotten healthy, even though the coffee wasn't the problem to begin with. So breakfast is one of those things where people who are healthier, because they believe it's important to eat breakfast, tend to eat breakfast. But if you look at the breakfast they eat, it's cereal and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily like, the correlation totally breaks down, like if you really get into the weeds of what it is they're eating. Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm gonna cover real quick couple of questions that came up. There we go. Got some email questions, and also want to send out the survey. These are a lot of things. So interested in the 16.8 version of IF specifically, whether it's healthy for women. So there are a lot of hormonal things with men, and there's a lot of hormonal things with women. So a lot of the studies were done on men, and just because men were at the time more interested in doing intermittent fasting. There was a thing that was called the warrior diet way back when, which was basically one big meal a day. And that was one version, that's like the 20:4 method. And a lot of men were into it because it's hardcore, and a lot of women weren't into it. So they studied the men, they got a lot of volunteers, and then what they found was that it was fine, it was healthy, but then they had to say, this has not been studied on women or not been studied with women. And there's a lot of things where they say that, like when you see something that says, this has not been studied with or not recommended for women. Well, not recommended doesn't mean I recommend you don't do it. It means that we do not necessarily recommend it because it has, hasn't been tried. So it's like it's like a wordplay thing. It's for years, I'm totally bald, as you can see. I tried Rogaine, that liquid, you put on your head, and I read the label a lot, and it said not tested on women. And people like women who had hair loss issues would wonder, hey, can I use this stuff? And it would say, well, it hasn't been tested on women, or it's not recommended for women. Well, a lot of them, it's not that they tested it on women and found that it didn't work. They had never tested it on women. So the odds are it could work, and many women found that it worked, but because of the wording on the way of these things. So that's how some of these things come about. Now, there are some specific issues with hormones with women that can be different. So some more women than men seem to not like intermittent fasting in the long term, and it can cause some more ups and downs with blood sugar and things like that. A lot of this, when they looked into it, was because they weren't eating enough. So if you don't eat enough for a significant amount of time, a lot of things can change. Hormones can change, metabolism can slow, as we talked about before. So in general, it's healthy for women under the same conditions that it's healthy for men. If you're doing fine, it should be, and you don't have significant hormonal issues that are affected by low calories, it should be fine. And as she says, she tried some extremely low calorie 2 to 3 days a week. So if you want to make intermittent fasting work for a long period of time, it's important that you don't go super low calorie, especially without assistance of a doctor. Because when you go really low calorie, it's really hard to get into the nutrition levels that you need to get. And you're really stressing your body. And we talked about the stress before. That's just one more stressor, and that can really trigger some ups and downs on all sorts of different hormones. 2 people asked a similar question, which is, can I use meal replacement shakes? And one says like smoothies with protein added, and can I mix them with fasting? And absolutely you can, but if you are the type of person that finds meal replacements and smoothies satisfying and filling. Like I do not. Like Galena, my wife, does. If she has a shake or a smoothie with protein and healthy fat in there, it can be just like she ate a meal. I have one of these things, and it's like half an hour later, it's like I didn't have anything to eat. I'm hungry all over again. So to a large degree, calories are calories. And as long as they're healthy calories and made up of similar things. But so whether it's solid or liquid doesn't have that much of a difference. But some people are not satisfied by them, or some people metabolize liquids much faster than solids. So if that's the problem for you, monitor it. You can feel free to try it. And then if it doesn't work, switch back to real food, or whole food, I'm sorry. It's a reliable way to eat and know I'm getting enough nutrients for health. The best way to do this, and this also with the same one, can you discern if your diet fills all of your nutritional needs? It's going to be very hard, and I recommend that if somebody's doing the 1 meal a day thing for a significant period of time, that they use some sort of an app where you log and track your food, because you can use these and you can make sure you're getting enough protein. You can make sure you're getting enough fiber, and you can look at the breakdowns. Like if you use something like MyFitnessPal or something to log your food, you can go in there and you can do a little breakdown of your vitamins and minerals and make sure that you're getting enough of these things over time, because it can be hard you don't need to weigh and measure everything for a significant amount of time. But if you spend some time, and most people eat relatively similarly over time, so you will learn that once you sort of get into the swing of things, what level it takes to keep yourself healthy and giving enough actual nutrition. And I think once you get to that point, you can go a long way towards staving off those cravings. Because a lot of people believe, and I'm one, that a lot of times cravings are caused by our body's subconscious desire for some sort of micronutrition. Like if you've seen these charts online where, oh, if you're craving chocolate, what you're really craving is selenium, for instance. And I don't know if it's selenium, but let's just use that as an example. So do you really need to have chocolate, or could you have something that has selenium in it, like a Brazil nut or something like that? So there's similar things like that. So sometimes we crave things, and we might crave something that's unusual, and that could be a sign that we're not getting enough nutrition. So it might be interesting to take a look at that, what it is you're craving under those circumstances, and kind of look at, am I getting enough of the types of micronutrition that comes with those things? Because the macronutrition, protein, fat, carbohydrate, and also like things like fiber and bulk, those are unlikely, if you're not getting enough, they're unlikely to cause cravings. But it's the micronutrition, the vitamins and the minerals that are typically going to be causing those cravings. Okay. All right. Oh, Gregory.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, buddy. How you been?
Oh, it's Gregory from Xerox. Oh, such a distinctive voice. How are you?
I was trying to get my video on. I'm having some challenges, so yeah, I can't get the video going so you can see my face, but
that's quite all right.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Or nice to see your name. Oh, we lost Sherry. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions? And Gregory, I will be putting up the replay to this, because you came right at the end.
Oh, I thought it started at 6.
Yeah, 6 Pacific time.
Yeah.
I mean 5 Pacific time. 6 Mountain time.
That's okay, man. I'm okay. I screwed up.
That's okay. That's okay. I have your email address, and I will make sure that you will get the replay.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah. Maybe we can chat anyway. I'd love to catch up.
Yeah.
Catch up. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. I think I have no one has any questions. Gregory, you probably have a ton of questions, but you'll have to watch the thing first.
Yeah.
Gregory, let me ask real quick. Have you done intermittent fasting before?
I have not. I've never done intermittent fastings. I've done week-long fastings before. And so that's why I was interested to kind of see what this was all about and see how different it was. And hopefully it was, I can eat in between.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's actually one of the, like we talked about early on, one of the beauties, and it's, to sort of sum up, is like one of the things that I love about intermittent fasting is it gives you like, yeah, you're not eating for a period of time, but when you do eat, you get the feeling that you get to eat more normal food again, right? So like you don't have to eat tiny little amounts. You don't have to be so careful with weighing and measuring. You can, so it's, yeah, it's a real, feels a little restrictive at first as you learn to do the intermittent fasting, but once you get into it, it's like very freeing.
And this contributes to what health with the body?
Yeah, health, weight loss, and yeah, you know, so if you have like high blood pressure or weight to lose, insulin sensitivity, you know, like if they're on the verge of like type 2 diabetes or something like that, it can go a long way to helping with that. Or high cholesterol, it's also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oops, why is it not moving forward? All right. So as you all know, I'm an author of diet books, nutrition books, things like that. I'm also a health coach. So if that's something you're interested, 2020 has been as the kids say, a dumpster fire. Both to a lot of my clients who are, you know, it's like when it started, it was really hard to rein in the nostalgic foods and the comfort foods. But a lot of them have been joining me lately because they're done with 2020 and they want to start fresh with 2021 and really take things, really start things from sort of get a fast start. So one of the things that I'm doing is starting new little groups, small groups, and I'm going to be covering in the next couple of weeks. This is the first one, the intermittent fasting, but I'm going to be covering keto and low carb and some other diets. I got a lot of requests for the Mediterranean diet. So that's one that I'm going to be covering as well in the upcoming couple of weeks, because the Mediterranean diet is a very interesting diet. And for a lot of people, it feels very less restrictive. And it's one of the ones that's one of the most studied diets in the world. So it's a great one. So also in 2021, if you're interested in losing weight or taking care of health issues, in addition to the groups, I'm going to be starting a Bring a Buddy and Save thing, because one of the things that I've been doing a lot of research into, calling it the buddy system is a little bit not quite on par with reality, but it's accountability. So if you have accountability partners, especially if it's somebody you know or you come to know, then it can go a long way towards helping you build up your fast start, and also to maintain, and you just feel like this camaraderie that you're not in this thing alone. Because a lot of times when I am working with clients one-on-one, like I am their accountability partner. So I always encourage them to find somebody, you know, in quote unquote real life that they can turn to. So lately, a lot of people have asked about, because they're at home with their family now, they want another way to. I had one client who wants to do a long-term, or like a long, what do you call it, a long distance, rebuild the relationship with her sister, and they both want to, they both have autoimmune conditions and they want to get things taken care of over Zoom. So the three of us are going to be doing that together. So if it sounds like something you're interested in, any of these things, I'm forming groups, and you can get a free consultation right there at the link. You can't click it because it's just here, but I can put it in the thing. eatmovelivefifty2.com/coaching. Let me, I can actually post it in there, but I'll send it out in the email follow-up as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you said you recorded the session, so I'll be able to see the recording?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. It should go up, the recording should be done and processed by tomorrow, so I will send it out, tomorrow.
So you send it out via email, or I go to the website to view it?
Well, I will send you a link to it in the email.
Oh, cool.
That would be the easiest way to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if you use Gmail, but hopefully there was a Gmail apocalypse today, and where Gmail went down for hundreds of thousands of people around the world. So
I still got
Oh,
hot
good.
meal. Mine works.
Hot whale. Okay.
But they kept giving me a hard time. I'm still using that, and I guess that's the one that still stayed up to work.
That's right. That's right. I'm lucky. But it was interesting because before I joined, I looked to see, like, because you can see who uses what when I sent out the reminder. And I would say about 70% of the people had Gmail. And then when I clicked, it all said that they all got rejected. So, and unfortunately, I don't have, I mean, I'll have a way to send them the replay, but in the meantime, I don't have any way, like if I just have somebody's email, I don't have any other way to contact them. So a little bit bummed, but
Yeah.
no, that's all right. Maybe more. Don't want to see the replay. It's good. Well, great. Thank you so much for joining me, and look for the replay. And like I said, if anyone wants more information about intermittent fasting, I have there's the chapter in our book that we wrote on intermittent fasting, which kind of walks you through how to do it, like how to start incorporating it into your life. I'd be happy to send you the chapter, or if you want to buy the book, I can send you a link to the book as well. So it's a great way to start. 52 ways to feel better in a week. Something for every week.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Roland.
Thank you, Brina, Karen, Gregory. Nice to see you all again. And everyone else watching, have a wonderful night. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.